on our kind of project presentations for carer contingency. Are you right to go to the next slide, please, Steve? Thank you. So this is just a kind of quick overview of our agenda for this afternoon, which Steve kindly shared with us quite a while ago. So we're going to have a brief welcome and a bit of scene setting, which I'll keep to a minimum because I want to hear all the great things that you're doing. And then there'll be a chance for a Q&A and then a bit of a conversation about next steps at the end. Could I have the next slide, please, Steve? Thank you. So this is our running order, and we've moved it a little bit since this morning, so thank you all for being understanding. I think ironic in a contingency planning project that life hasn't gone to plan for us today, as it often doesn't. So we've just changed the order a little bit, which I hope is okay with everyone. Can I have the next slide, please, Steve? Thank you. So as I said, I'm Verity and I work in the National Commitment to Carers team, and we're really glad to have you all here today and can't wait to hear how you're getting on and kind of have everyone to share their ideas and problem solve together a little bit, I guess. We know it's a really hard environment and we hugely appreciate your time and the impact that COVID-19 might have been having on some of the projects and how far you've been able to get with them. I think we know that COVID has put systems and carers and providers under more pressure than ever, but sort of at the same time, never has carer contingency planning been so important for that very reason. And kind of a bit of an anecdote that one of my friends is a physio on ICU, and a gentleman with dementia who didn't have COVID was taken in to a COVID ward with his wife because there was no one to look after him and no plan in place for what would happen if anything happened to her. So I think it's more poignant now than ever, whilst a really difficult environment to kind of get some of this stuff going. So we really appreciate your time and the fact that you wanted to work on these projects. So a little bit of housekeeping that Steve has probably already started doing in the chat box, managing me. So the meeting is being recorded, and if you don't want to appear, please do turn your camera off. Please use the chat box to introduce yourself and ask questions. I'll do my best to answer where I can, but we do have an opportunity for Q&A at the end too. Steve is going to mute everyone to avoid background noise, and Steve is in charge of slides. So when you want to move on, please do ask Steve for the next slide if you are using slides today. So I'm afraid I will have to stop you after 10 minutes to ensure that everyone gets an equal opportunity to speak and share their projects and all the learning. But I will give you all a 2-minute warning in the chat box. Is that everything, Steve, that I was meant to cover in housekeeping? You have to nudge me if I've missed anything.
No, that's fine. Yeah. Perfect. And just to let people know that the session is being recorded to be, for you to want to catch up afterwards, to just go back and replay it again. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll share the slides and the recording after the meeting. Can I have the next slide, please, Steve? I'm going to try and mute my chat at the same time. Thank you. So I'm just going to set the scene very, very briefly because you all know this already, I'm sure. So the long-term plan makes a really clear commitment for carers regarding emergencies and contingency planning. And hopefully you'll also be aware that we've commissioned Carers digital resource for Carers UK digital resource for carers and jointly to support and enable carers to do some of this for themselves, and that we are kind of supporting projects to also enable some of this in systems. If I could have the next slide, please, Steve. So you will be aware, I think, as your regional leader will let you know, that we have managed to get a new SNOMED code for carer contingency planning, which links to the summary care record. It definitely took longer than we thought, but we got there. And kind of thinking about the summary care record, it's just bearing in mind that primary care is the gatekeeper to that and kind of updating that information on a person's record, which is why in the bid documents that you put together, primary care networks were kind of central stakeholders to the bid and the requirements. And what we're really hoping is that now that this code is in existence, it will enable your project to deliver specifically on some of those long-term plan commitments, but also will enable a consistent metric to understand sort of the delivery of the long-term plan within systems and nationally, so we can think about how many of those 100,000 which are set out in the long-term plan are kind of being delivered within that summary care record, so that the information is where professionals need it to be if there were an emergency situation. So that is enough from me, and I will now pass on to Pam. I think we've got today in West Yorkshire and Harrogate to speak about their project. So I'll set my timer and I'll give you a 2-minute warning, Pam.
Thank you. How long have I got, Verity?
You've got 10 minutes. 10
minutes, right. I'm going to try and see if I can keep it concise. There's not too many slides anyway, so it should be all right. But thanks for that. So my name's Pam Shepherd. I'm the Senior Programme Manager for the West Yorkshire Health and Care Partnership. What we decided to do was to obviously bid for the contingency planning funding, which was great news. We secured that funding, and this was really kind of accumulated in discussions that we had at the sort of back end of last year with our carer steering group, which is representative of all our 5 places in West Yorkshire, around the need for a contingency plan and what we were going to do as a system to make this happen. So if we move on to the next slide. So what we did with the steering groups, that we agreed a set of common principles of what the contingency plan should include. So, you know, as Verity summarised there, you know, it's a plan should the carer, for whatever reason, be unable to continue caring. So with that in mind, we wanted to look at a plan where no one size fits all, that it could meet everyone's needs. It could be the longest plan in history if you wanted it to be, or it could be a sticker. You know, it could be something that is there to suit lots of people's different needs. It could be offline, it could be online. It was about carers owning the plan and taking responsibility for that plan, because we felt that that's where it's going to have the most traction. It would also be a strength-based plan, which makes use of networks that carers have, you know, whether it's family, friends, you know, their health and social care team, as well as emergency contacts. We also wanted to be clear that a domiciliary care response was kind of the option of last resort, and it was very much framed around those particular networks of strength. There was also a really big push around making sure that any plan that we developed was really about facilitating that link between the carer and the social prescribing organisation or the commissioned voluntary sector organisation, to help coordinate and complete that plan with the carer themselves, as well as giving them the long-term support they need to continue caring. That was really, really important. There was also a big thing around decisions that are made and shared between the carer and the cared for. So what we wanted to be really clear about, and this goes for number 7, was to really take that personalised care focus, you know, where, you know, decisions are made with and by the people involved. You know, no decisions, you know, with me, without me, I guess. And that, you know, it's about what matters to the person and the cared for, and it's sensitive to their needs. And we also wanted a plan that was simple and accessible and easy for people to complete, and that was realistic and feasible, because there's no point, you know, if the plan's not realistic, it's not going to happen, is it? You know, there's no points, you know, coming up with some wonderful wild plan if, when you actually come to the crunch, you know, the Yorkshire ambulance crew can't make head nor tail of it, and they can't put it into plan for you. So that was really, really important. And also the fact that it's needs based, so, you know, that it used resources fairly and it was regularly tested and monitored. You know, we all know that a plan is only as good as how up to date or accurate it is. And, you know, that it, I guess, in terms of sort of fair use, that it's kind of regularly tested to check that it's meeting those person's needs, and also that, you know, that you have that ability for it to be an offline or online plan, and that it can link to different resources out there as well where it needs to. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the idea that we came up with was to link it to the NHS app, and it's not just about the NHS app. We're also looking at how we link it to our Yorkshire and Humber Care record, which ultimately will be the shared patient record that can be accessible by anyone from social care, acute trusts, right through to Yorkshire Ambulance Service and GP practices. So it was about having something that was a future-proof concept. What we thought about was, due to COVID-19, a lot of us have had to have a COVID pass when we go on holiday. So we came up with the idea of linking it to the NHS app, because we thought that actually it's a really neat way of having something all in one place, where you can have a contingency plan that lists, you know, all about the person that you care for. It has those emergency contacts at a flick of a button. It can have all the care provision, legal information, and other bits and bobs that are important to that person as a carer, as well as the person they care for. And it also gives people the ability to put in those key pieces of information, but be able to decide which bits of information are the most pertinent, because it could be that you don't complete all of those sections, or you complete some of them, but equally, if you're a busy carer, it might be that you start to complete it and you come back to it later, which is where the save and continue button comes in. So we've made it accessible. We've tried to make it simple for people to complete. It's very much a concept at the moment. If we go to the next slide, I'll take a bit more. So the headings that we shared with you are very much the things that carers have told us they want. So we've engaged a lot with carer groups across West Yorkshire to get this plan right. We're still finishing the plan off and we're still finalising it. But the things that carers have told us they need is things around their care provision, medication, social emotional needs, their sensory needs, communication needs, cultural needs, as well as really simple things like, you know, do they have a pet that they look after? What will happen to the pet should the person be unable to care? It's all those little things that are so important when someone is unable to care in an emergency situation. But the response that we've had from carer groups when we kind of presented the initial idea has been really, really positive. So we know that we're going in the right direction. We're finalising a plan at the moment which pulls in all of this information. So what you've seen there is a bit of a mock-up, but we're hoping to get that signed off by the end of this month. Campbell, who's just joined us, is one of our key stakeholders and leads within the project for us regionally, for West Yorkshire. We've got a task and finish group that meets fortnightly. We had our first meeting on Monday. So basically, where we're going from there is that we'll get the plan finalised, and from that point onwards, we're liaising with our digital team to look at procuring a supplier to help us start to articulate the ask and develop the solution that we have in mind, which is to link with the NHS app and the Yorkshire Humber Care Record. And I think that's pretty much it from me at the moment. Thank you. Oh, there is just one more thing. We've got an offline solution called Message in a Bottle, which is a bottle that's freely given out by a charity called the Lions. And I'm working with Campbell on that to develop as an offline solution to this, because it's great having an online, but you also need an offline. So that is basically where the blueprint plan will come in. It can be rolled up, put in the bottle, or it can literally be something that's indicated by whatever's in the bottle to say, this is where it is, it's on top of the fridge or in the drawer, this is where it is to an ambulance crew. So that's something else that we're also looking at developing as well. Hope I've not got over my time, Verity, but that's it in short. Thank you.
Which is very impressive, so thank you. And I think there's lots of exciting things in that project that we can all kind of learn from. I guess, does anyone have any questions firstly in the kind of room? And if not, I'm going to ask a question, if that's okay. So on an earlier slide, you'd said that the information from the app, I think, would be shared with GP practices. And I just wanted to kind of understand whether the existence of the contingency plan would be kind of coded using the new code, and equally what parts of the information you would be thinking of including from the plan on the care record, if that makes sense. Or if you haven't got that far yet, and I might be jumping the gun.
we have thought about it, and it is in the thinking. I guess where we're going with that is when we get the ability to share information through the Yorkshire and Humber Care Record, because at the moment the NHS app, you know, you can do various things with that. You could order your prescriptions on that, and there's various other things you could do with it. So I think what we want to do is to get to a point where we have a solution whereby we can share it with the Yorkshire and Humber Care Record. We can understand what information we can code and translate into that Yorkshire and Humber Care Record and what we can push through. Of course, it goes without saying that we want that information coded with the new code, contingency code, because that just makes perfect common sense. So that's kind of where we would be going with that. So absolutely, in terms of actual pieces of information or actual fields, that's something we haven't got as far as yet. But you know, I'd imagine it would be things like obviously emergency contacts, you know, medication, you know, sort of general arrangements for that person should the carer be unable to care for them. So it would be kind of in that kind of vein, really, Verity.
Thank you. That's what I thought you might say, but I thought I'd ask. Does anyone have any other questions that they might like to ask? Oh, Campbell, go on.
No, just Pam, that summed up extraordinarily well. Just the actual place in the electronic patient record that the information could be stored will probably be in the same place as the contingency information that goes up into the summary care record would be stored, because this information, there is a way under summary care record additional roles where you can put the contingency information so it can be read on SCR. But one of the geniuses of this project is that it doesn't require SCR because it's going to go through the Yorkshire, as Pam said, the Yorkshire and Humber portal. So it means that the ambulance service will be able to see the information directly without having to go onto the spine to see the information. But when SCR gets sorted out, you can see, or when we've got a better way that the information can be uploaded into SCR, then you can see how this project's future-proofed as well.
Yes, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Pam. That's wonderful, and I appreciate how swift you were. Saves me a job. So I will now pass on to colleagues in, I think it's North West London we have next. So Kashmir and Luke.
Hi, Verity. I think it's Kashmir here. I don't think Luke's managed to get on the call today. Is it? And just want to check, is it okay if I leave my camera off? I'm having problems with my camera.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. That's both
Thank
fine.
You. All right, thanks. Okay, so obviously that's just our introductory page. If you want to move to the next slide. Okay, just in terms of a little bit of background about who we are and where we are. So Ealing is the fourth largest London borough by population, and we, like other London boroughs, have a very diverse population. It's located in West London and is part of the North West London ICS. In terms of demographics, we estimate that there's about 35,000 unpaid carers in the borough, and we, as with other, you know, as across the board nationally, there's a high proportion of women carers, and specifically we've identified that there's a high number of Asian women carers in the borough. We are working with on this project with our Ealing Carers Centre, so that's a local authority commissioned carers centre, which provides support to all carers. So it has a remit to support all carers of all health and social care conditions, as well as all ages, although we do have a separate young carers project as well. We are going to be engaging with a number of self-directed carers groups as well. So we have self-directed groups that mental health carers, people that are caring for people with dementia, parent carers, learning disabilities, and carers of those with alcohol and substance misuse issues. And because of the nature of our demographics of the borough, we'll be targeting women carers and carers from the Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities in the borough. Moving on. So the aims of the project are to develop and capture carer contingency plans in care records, so that the information about the care needs of the cared for are available as soon as possible in situations where a carer becomes unable to care for them. We're working with carers directly and voluntary sector organisations, other voluntary sector organisations apart from the Carer Centre and the self-directed carers groups, also working with groups like Health Watch, and a number of specific Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups, so that we can get that targeted engagement with those communities. So what we're aiming to do is to ensure that the carer contingency plans meet the needs of the carers and those they care for. So hearing directly from carers is obviously going to be the key part of making sure that whatever or however the plans develop, that they meet their needs. We've already done some engagement with carers around other sort of approaches that we have about supporting carers, things like carers assessments, and we've already heard feedback that the processes are too complicated, forms are too long, it's not clear, why information is asked and what's going to happen to that information. So we're building on the feedback that we're already getting from carers on other sort of processes, sort of health and social care processes. Obviously, we're engaging with health and social care professionals. So from their point of view, the plans need to be accessible, they need to be relevant, and they need to be current, they need to be up to date. We're going to work on the current carers emergency card process that we have in Ealing. And this is largely driven by the local authority, and those records largely sit with the local authority records. So we need to look at how we develop a system that we share records between health and social care, so there's not a sort of delay in systems talking to each other or professionals talking to each other. And as I said, one of the issues that we've identified already is how carer contingency plans remain kind of current and updated. So that's already one issue that's been identified from the engagement that we've had already. And then just a sort of quick update on the next slide. So we've established our steering group. It involves carers directly, voluntary sector organisations, and our health and social care professionals. So we have a primary care representation and representation from adult social care. We've informed our ICP partners, and we'll keep them updated. We've looked at our current position, in particular regards to the emergency card that's currently that we're currently working with, and getting feedback on that from both professionals and from carers, and then just kind of working through what's currently recorded on health records. And basically we've established that it's not a lot really, apart from flagging whether somebody's a carer. I think as well, what we've also identified is that if a lot more carers have come forward as carers, and I think particularly with the invitation for carers to receive the vaccination, and what our GP colleagues are saying is that that did prompt a lot more carers to come forward. So that's a positive thing, but I think we also there's a sense that that needs a little bit more investigation and as to whether people are actual carers or primary carers or secondary carers. So we're fortunate in the sense that we've got the Carer Centre has a good record number, registration number of carers, and we're going to be working through those individual carers. We've got a volunteer who's going to be ringing people and doing some individual kind of one-to-one conversation, getting feedback. So that project started already. So we're continuing to look at other engagement opportunities and communications. So we've got our comms team on board. One to sort of promote, to kind of communicate the project, make people aware of the project, and then get them more involved in the engagement opportunities. We're also started discussions around the system and information governance requirements, about sharing records between health and social care, getting consent, that sort of thing. And as I've said already, we've got a kind of program of engagement and co-production events being delivered during this month and next. So that's really where we are with our project in Ealing.
Thank you, and it's really positive to have a project looking specifically at a community that we know, sorry, that's my timer, that we know are, that's now my dog, that we know are less likely to access services and also support. So I think there will be lots of learning from your project that we can all kind of embed within existing projects. So thank you for sharing that. It's really exciting to have you doing this project, and really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Kashmir? No, getting head shakes. Perfect. Thank you. In that case, I think we're going to another London project next. I think it's South West London.
Hello, it's Heather here.
I'll hand over to you.
Thanks. So I'm just going to talk through the first couple of slides, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Dashana, who's the lead project manager on this project. So we're very new to this, so we only started this project last week, but I just wanted to give you a bit of context as to why we felt that it would be really useful, to be part of this this project going forward. So next slide, please. So I just wanted to give you a bit of context. Actually, I think Ealing is one of our comparator boroughs, so it's actually quite a very similar setup in Merton to Ealing. And so our South West London CCG or ICS includes Wandsworth, Richmond, Kingston, Merton, Sutton and Croydon. This project will focus on Merton, but we will share the learning across the ICS. So we've got a population of around 2,000. It's a very diverse borough, the same as Ealing, but actually we've got some very affluent areas in Merton, like Wimbledon Village, and some areas of real extreme deprivation as well. So it's quite a diverse makeup of a borough between the east and the west of the borough. So we estimate around 16,000 unpaid carers in Merton, and currently within our 21 GP practices there are just under 5,000 carers registered. Again, the same as Ealing, we've seen an increase this year, and we have done some comparison data between 2019, and it's very much that carers were part of that vaccine cohort. Interestingly though, it was very much around, the increase was very much around the west of our borough, much more affluent and less diverse, to the east of our borough, where actually those numbers didn't increase significantly. So that is an area of concern for us. So again, similar to Ealing, we have a carers hub with a local carers organisation and other partners within that as well, who provide, we discharge our statutory function around assessments and support to all carers from the age of 5 years old. And there's currently just over 3,000 registered with Carer Support Merton. So this is something that we're really quite concerned about in terms of the significant gap, and a recent carer survey has showed also the significant detrimental impact on people with their caring role. You're all carers lead, so I'm not going to go on too much about this because you all know the situation and the impact that COVID has had as well. But carers have also told us that by having a contingency plan in place, significantly reduced their anxiety and worry about what would happen to the person they care for in the event of an emergency situation. And that became much more prevalent with the COVID pandemic as well. So that's just something that we really want to focus on in Merton. Next slide, please. Okay, so we knew that we needed to do more in Merton. So we've actually recently launched our new Merton carer strategy. We hadn't had one for quite a while. Really, we kind of looked at the impact of COVID when we did that strategy. So actually, we went back and we re-looked at everything. We were literally due to launch the week before lockdown. And then we had to go back and re-look and actually did a lot more engagement with carers in terms of, you know, how it's been for them. And carers contingency and emergency is a key priority outcome of our strategy. So when this project came along, it was actually, yes, let's go for this, because what we're doing at the moment is looking to implement carers cards. We're one of the few London authorities that doesn't actually have a carers card contingency plan in place at the moment. So we felt that this was a really good opportunity, this project, to look at not just about the implementation of carers cards, but actually how those contingency plans that are attached to those carers cards are enacted across the ICS. So currently, carers are also encouraged to support loved ones with the completion of an urgent care plan, MyCMC. That's changing very soon to a new provider of so that will be all London boroughs are signed up to the same provider for that urgent care plan. So Dashana will be talking a little bit more about how we're going to map across all of the different types of contingency arrangements that we've got across Merton at the moment. So we've set up 4 co-production subgroups, which makes it really good that we've got carer representatives that we regularly talk to and carer peer support groups that are very much going to be part of this project going forward, so we can really co-produce what this work looks like. And in terms of the carers cards, we've already done quite a lot of work on the format, but it was really interesting to hear West Yorkshire and the approach they've taken from the NHS perspective, which is something that we hadn't considered, so definitely might be stealing that idea. Anyway, I'm just going to pass it over to my colleague Dashana to look at the project approach. Dashana.
Can everyone hear me? Am I unmuted? Great. So I'm Dashana Pinfield. I'm the project lead for this piece of work. And I just wanted to talk about what we... Oh, sorry, can I have the next slide, please? So this is to talk around our project approach. As Heather mentioned, I started last week on the project. So we have recruited, and I'm currently exploring options for engagement to ensure carers are helping to inform our plans. I want to look at what's currently in place at the moment, so all the pathways that we know about from our partners, and how they are working, what's working, what isn't working, and to engage with them in a way that is possibly through interviews or surveys to best find out what is currently in place at the moment, and to try and work out the data behind it in terms of how many contingency plans are being held at the moment and how they are being used, and kind of what triggers the process, so at what point a plan is put into place. So we want to map all of those pathways, and with the future plan of potentially coming up with a new pathway that we engage and work with carers and those using the service to kind of put in front of them to see whether that is going to work going forward. we have kind of tried to scope what challenges we might face in how quickly we can get the project done, and we're at the point where we're thinking like time pressure, but also thinking about our health primary care colleagues and how how accessible they will be at this point with COVID pressures, etc. So I just wanted to raise that and to kind of also ask if that has proved an issue with those that are a bit further down in the project than we are at the moment. So sorry, I'm just trying to. So we're looking really for the project to provide foundations to increase contingency plans recorded in the future. We want to up the number of plans and how they are accessible across the ICS. And we want a shared commitment across the ICS to support the activation of contingency plans and how best to do that and how best to talk to each other. And finally, we will be confirming our approach of recording and sharing of contingency plans and sharing it with the whole of South West London. That's it.
Perfect, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or any feedback for Deshana? Go on, Ros.
Hello, hi. Let me first put my hand down before I forget. Thank you very much. That was really helpful, really interesting. I just wanted to ask, it was something Heather mentioned about the number of carers registered with their GP increased. We don't know how much by, but it seemed to increase due to the vaccination programme and basically people wanting to get registered for that. And I know that sort of nationally, as well as different bits of London, carers were reporting through carer centres that they were having issues registering and so on. But I just found it really interesting that in your more affluent part of the borough, it went up higher than the least or the poorer part of the borough. Is there any sort of sense of why? Was that around carers not coming forward, or was it more around perhaps GPs in more deprived areas perhaps were struggling more with, I don't know, and you might not know, but I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ros. We're doing a bit of digging on that actually, because I think it's about access to information and actually knowledge and people's interest in really engaging. And I think if you look, for example, at some of our community forums, they're very, very well attended in Wimbledon, less so in Mitcham and some of our other, and so there's a wider piece of work that Merton are doing at the moment, and we're doing a lot of really targeted work with some specific communities, and that's having some positive impacts as well. So I don't have the answer. I can make assumptions, but what we want to do is base it on fact as much as we can. What the key thing for us in terms of the carer strategy work is, once the carer is identified, what next? And it's not just a referral over to local carer centre. That's amazing, but that's not enough. It's actually about what people can do when they identify, and we're actually piloting some specific health assessments at the moment in some of our local GP practices in the east of the borough, which are looking at specific health needs of carers, so really focusing it on the needs and things that we know that carers really struggle with, for example, sleep. I'm digressing rather a lot, but I think it's just kind of, it's a useful thing. So we're doing a lot of work with our GP practices around that at the moment, but it is difficult to engage at the moment. Practice managers, if you get past the practice managers, you're okay, but they're very much gatekeeping resources, quite rightly.
Yeah, thank you, that's really interesting, and yeah, good luck with that. Let me know how it goes.
Kashmir, I can see you've got a question.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question for you, Verity, or but yes, I just wanted to pick up on Deshana's point about primary care engagement, and obviously the pressures that they're under at the moment, and whether obviously this is very sort of a very quick project, and looking for kind of end of project reports early March, given that we the pressures on primary care and our ability to engage with them on the projects, is that kind of recognized by the kind of central team?
Yeah, and we are having, it won't surprise you to know, similar challenges in that kind of NHS England engaging with the kind of primary care medical directors, because they are their focus is on vaccinations and COVID. We've got a conversation next week actually with Nikki Kanani and Raj, the kind of medical directors, about timings of communicating some kind of the SNOMED code and all of those kinds of things, and when is best to do that. And I think what I would say is that we are really realistic about the nature of the kind of systems and providers and everything that's going on at the moment, and how hard it is to engage with primary care because of the pressures. I think we, as long as we have kind of headline findings by March, we can have conversations, and I'll encourage your regional leads to get in touch with you and have conversations about when might be most realistic to have those final reports and those final findings. We do just need a really clear indication of by the end of March, well, the 8th of March, where you've got to, and kind of how long it might take to get to the final stage. As long as we have headline findings and we know what direction you're going in, then there is definitely room for manoeuvre, because absolutely understand the nature of working at the moment is very tricky.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any other questions, or I will hand over to, who have we got next? North East London.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you all so far for the lovely presentations that you've presented. I'm Pandroklos Sesis. I'm the Integrated Commissioning Manager, and within my portfolio of work, carers support is one of our key projects. On this project, it's focused primarily in Waltham Forest, but the finding of this work is going to be disseminated and shared with our partners across the ICS. We are working alongside our Commission Community Support Service, which is Carers First. So can we go to the next slide, please? Great, wow. Now, North East London is a very diverse area and has quite a large population. In Waltham Forest in particular, we are about 270,000 people, and we have approximately 1,700 registered unpaid carers. I'm not going to go through this slide in particular, but what I would like to mention is in Waltham Forest, we have an all-age care strategy, which was approved by our cabinet back in 2019, and we have an action plan in which we are in our second year. Part of our achievement is that we've got a carers working group, development group, where we've got key partners across different sections that are working towards achieving the key outcomes of that action plan that comes from this strategy. Can we go to the third slide, please? Great. So our key project aim, the key question was that if we had a carers contingency planning in Waltham Forest, and the answer was no, we didn't. So we felt that this project, when it came to us, was key in helping us identifying those gaps, and therefore the aim of this project is to conduct a review in co-production with all our partners, Carers First, who are our carers support service, are social care professionals across and health professional within the ICS system, and the unpaid carers who are being represented by a variety of groups. That could be parent support, parent carers, and people that we're trying to engage through our commission service. By doing this review, our key deliverables for this project is to produce a comprehensive review, a report that will be developed with our unpaid carers and professionals in the front line, identifying key areas of improvement across the borough in regards to contingency planning, and making recommendations on how to improve the contingency planning in Waltham Forest. Therefore, those findings can be escalated to senior management and get commitment in continuing this work. As mentioned earlier, the time frame of delivering this project is quite tight, but and currently we are in the midst of this work. The approach that we've taken in regards to this project is to develop surveys, questionnaires that will be shared through different channels to frontline health and social care professionals, also digitally through our borough newsletter, so people can fill this survey online, and if required, hard copy can be shared for people that request it, and through our existing channels of the carers development group. Measure of success for this project is the level of engagement and involvement that we get from our stakeholders, the feedback that we get from professional and carers from the development group, and therefore securing commitment from senior leadership in how to move forward. Furthermore, developing work streams that will continue beyond this project. Key risks on this project, beside the tight timeline and also taking into consideration the pressures that currently frontline staff are dealing with, is if we are not able to reach out to as many professionals to complete the survey and the questionnaires that we've already shared with them, and obviously that as an outcome would be not to have gathered all the insight that those frontline professionals have. So this is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Alongside in this meeting, I've also invited our partners and colleagues from Carers First.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask? If not, I'm gonna ask a quick. Oh, go on, Roz.
Sorry, I couldn't get my hand up quick enough. Yeah, I just thought actually you're doing quite a lot of work with you know, bringing people together, and it just struck me that I don't, and I must confess I don't know Waltham Forest very well, but that to me would be success criteria as well. You know, if you are managing to bring people together and to work around the carers agenda. But you know, as I say, so I think my question is, was that something that was quite well developed, or is that something you're finding that you're having to develop alongside this?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have this strategy. Therefore, I believe there was the foundation already. So we have networks, and people are aware within the organization and senior management that there is work that needs to be done as part of engaging as much with residents to register as unpaid carers. So the networks and paths and those links exist. but therefore, but it is a challenge, because getting people registering as paid carers has been proven challenging over the years. Therefore, alongside this piece of work, there are other streams that are currently being developed on how to engage as many residents as possible to register as unpaid carers and receive the support they require. So yes, this is a challenge, and it's part of the wider strategy of engaging with people. Therefore, this work and resource that has been injected in our current work will support us with that.
Great, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? If not, I'm going to ask a quick question, if that's okay. So my question is about, and it's very much linked to what you were just saying, and then also the kind of Kashmir's project and what Heather was saying about the more affluent kind of carers being more aware potentially of what they are entitled to. And that's when you're collecting your insight, are you understanding who you're hearing from in terms of demographics, so that kind of equality and diversity monitoring, so you know who you're getting feedback from, or is it a kind of generic collecting of information?
Well, this was one of the key criteria before as we were developing this questionnaire, is to identify the background of those people that are completing this questionnaire. Therefore, gathering the protected characteristics, it's quite important in this case, and it's something that we've taken in consideration, and I believe it's part of the service and questionnaires that are going out to gather this information and understand which part of the borough they come from, because as you may know or may not know, also we have this divide in our borough. The north part of the borough is more affluent than the south part of the borough. So Chingford has a more affluent resident profile than Leighton and Leytonstone. So yes, it is important for us, and we wouldn't want to get skewed. Well, it's not up to us actually. The result of this questionnaire will let us know which people are engaging more than others, and which work that what work that we need to do more with the people that are not engaging as much. So getting a postcode will help us with that, and all the protected characteristic information. I hope I answered the question there.
You did wonderfully. Thank you very much. So I will now pass on to, I think, do we have Jane Lodge next from Sussex? Steve, is that who we have next on our agenda? I can't see if Jane's here because I'm not seeing everyone, but if you are, Jane. No, I don't think so. Okay, I will follow up with Jane separately, and in that case we'll hand over to Jack in Greater Manchester, if that's okay with you, Jack.
That's absolutely fine. Thanks, Verity. Hello, everyone. Lovely to meet you all. I'm Jack DC. I'm a project manager at the Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership. Steve, can we jump over to the next slide, please? Thank you, Steve. So just a little bit of context, because it's kind of important as to understand how this project is going to fit in with our programme. But in Greater Manchester, we have an unpaid carers programme, which is led by Bernie Enright, who's the DAS for Manchester. And it's a really great multidisciplinary forum, which meets every other month. It's got the carers leads from the 10 local authorities, which the 10 localities which constitute Greater Manchester, and it's got good representation from carers and from carer providers, the voluntary sector, NICE, and Sally Crichton. She also sits on that delivery group, and it's a really great challenging forum which tries to put carers' voice at the heart of the programme, identifies risks across the 10 local authorities, shares a lot of best practice, is able to recommend services and support opportunities for each other. It's just a big hub of being able to really share great work across Greater Manchester, and to share obstacles and challenges and how we go about addressing that. So I put some of our terms of reference there on the right hand side of the slide. Now within that delivery group itself, there's 4 active what we call work streams. There's one around BAME carers, there's one in carers and employment, and there's one which is secondary care and contingency planning for carers. Now I'll be very honest, we've really struggled for the last 9 months or so to find the correct leadership and steer for that particular work stream. We felt like it should be someone who's engaged in patient experience or someone from a secondary care setting, but it's been a real struggle to identify appropriate leadership for it. This project, I'm hoping, is going to act as a bit of a kickstart for that work stream and really get things moving for us. We know across the 10 localities that make up Greater Manchester, there's going to be some really great examples of contingency planning for carers. There's probably also going to be some other examples which aren't going to be, as good. But what we don't have is a map, a comprehensive map or intelligence report or single location where all of those contingency planning offers have been brought to one place, so we can really see what the landscape and environment looks like. So we're using the funding received for this project to employ a third party or commission a third party to perform that bit of research for us, to speak to all 10 of the local authorities, or the carers leads from the 10 local authorities, as well as the carer provider organisations and some carers themselves, to really gain an understanding of the variety of contingency planning offers across Greater Manchester, because you've got 10 distinct and different carer strategies in place there, and you've got 10 distinct characters in 10 distinct environments, which we really need to be able to understand and pull out the contingency offers in place that are active from across Greater Manchester, bring them all into one place. Steve, can we jump to the next slide, please? So we got about £5,000 for this project. Just 5,000 and a bit of change, actually. About £4,000 of that is being diverted to an organisation called Strategy for Change. Don't know if anyone's come across them, but I'd highly recommend them. They do really great, robust research. They make things that I come up with sound very professional. Loose ideas that I have, they turn them into fully formed visions and documents, and they're great. I really highly recommend them. And they've started the process of contacting key people, which I've identified across the 10 localities that make up Greater Manchester, to talk about what contingency plans they have on offer for carers. And in particular, we're looking at how those offers were designed, how they're advertised to carers, what the process is, or the embeddedness, I don't know if that's the right word, but the embeddedness with primary care systems, how aware staff are within the local authority of those offers, how they get deployed or triggered, the funding arrangements, who the partners are involved in delivering them, and what good looks like. What does great looks like? Where are some examples of where those contingency plans have been designed, deployed, and made a real fantastic difference to a carer's life who's had to use that process. So we're going to pull that all together in one really comprehensive intelligence report. I'd be really happy to share that with everyone as to what we find is the good stuff. And then the second part of the process, we're going to get some carers together, carers from across Greater Manchester who have used a contingency plan themselves, and we're going to show them this report, and we're going to say, this is what the localities are telling us. Does this match up to your experience? You know, do you think that carers have been involved in designing these processes? Are they fit for use? And we're going to get carers to really what we call confirm and challenge. We're going to go, yeah, it's good. This matches up to what we think, or we're going to go, actually, this isn't quite right. You know, this doesn't this report doesn't speak to my experience of using a contingency plan. So we'll have the initial report, and then we're going to have the carer's response. And a nice thing that I'm hoping is going to be really cool is we're going to also, alongside the person doing the intelligence report, we're going to have a graphic designer come on board, and the graphic designer is going to act as a scribe for that confirm and challenge session and really illustrate the different experiences of those carers, turn them into some kind of visual case studies of what those carers' experiences of using a contingency plan was like, and also illustrate the nature of that conversation. And I'm hoping that by having this kind of more formal intelligence report and baselining exercise alongside the carers' responses to that report and this set of visual graphics, we'll have a bunch of tools which are really useful to take back to our bi-monthly carers delivery group, show to the localities and to the organisations that take part in that delivery group itself, and say, we've done this exercise, we've mapped everything, we've got carers experience, they've been involved in the conversation, they've been able to professionally challenge us, and they've been paid for their experience. So all of the carers that take part in that confirm and challenge session, they'll be paid for their time because they're the real expert partners in this process. And we'll have these visual assets which will be social media ready, and localities can use that to conduct their own internal audits, potentially on, are their contingency plans, you know, are they up to the standard that we've set out across Greater Manchester, and do they match what those carers' expectations are that we've captured and carers' experiences are that we've captured in that confirm and challenge process, and making a bit of a feedback loop. And we'll kickstart that work stream that I spoke about earlier, the secondary care and contingency planning work stream, and we'll use the report and go, okay, is there anything that we would need to build on now from this report? Are there any changes that we can make across Greater Manchester? Steve, can we jump to the next slide, please? So challenges, yeah, loads of them, as always. I found it really difficult to get the money from NHS England, and that's because the nature of the partnership, we're not a real legal entity, we don't have a bank account, so I had to find a willing local authority to receive the money for us and invoice Verity, and thanks Verity for helping us out with that. But we finally got it over, so that's good. Also having to use that local authority's procurement framework to hire strategy for change to do the work. That's a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, but never mind. Time of year, winter pressures abound, right? All of the carers leads, they've got lots and lots of priorities at the moment, and you know, finding some time for them to give over to this exercise, obviously that's a bit of a struggle for them. I honestly believe that the confirm and challenge format would be better if it was real life, getting those carers in a room together. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be able to happen. Finding a graphic designer and illustrator who is willing to be able to absorb all that NHS jargon and those acronyms that we love using all the time, as well as being able to decode those carers' experiences, that's proving to be a bit of a challenge. And language as well. What do we mean by contingency plans? I bet that's not what carers call them. You know, and being able to go, I call it contingency plan, but you might call it the plan that you will put into place should something ever happen, the unspeakable, unmentionable, worst case scenario plan. You know, maybe that's a more appropriate terminology for it. I don't know. So those are the challenges that we came across. I think that's all me, Verity, but if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Perfect, thank you. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask Jack? about his presentation. Oh, I can see someone's got a question, but I can't see who, so just shout.
Hayley Hancock.
Yes, it's Hayley Hancock. Hello. I'll just move you across here. I've not been involved with the pilot, but I've come along just to understand how you're developing and running the project. I'm from Suffolk Family Carers. I'm head of services there, and language is obviously something that we obviously talk about a lot, as we all do. And in Suffolk, I've come along just to understand how we could develop our own emergency plans and contingency plans in Suffolk and how they link together. And one thing that we're worried about is duplication. So we have our emergency plans logged with social care. So if if something happens to the carers, we know, then either the paramedic or whoever would contact social care. So we're going to probably put a flagging system on our primary care system to say there is a contingency plan logged in with social care. So that's what I'm here for, because I was worried about a duplication and having two contingency plans as well, and how our language for a contingency plan is emergency plan, and our in Suffolk, contingency means more of a long-term plan. I might need a stair lift later on, because I might not be able to get upstairs and things like that. So it's been really interesting, and it's been good to hear how you're developing your own projects. So if anybody has experience in their exploration of their projects, come across how to mitigate duplication, I'd really like to understand that a little bit more. But thank you.
I don't think that was a specific question for me, Hayley, but
no, sorry, you just
I think you're right, and the answer is I don't know. I don't know how localities are able to avoid duplication, but maybe come the start of February, I will know, and we'll be able to set a standard, I guess, for Greater Manchester and the 10 localities. And of course, I'm more than happy to share the report that comes out of this.
The other thing I would say is that on our Futures platform, we've got a good practice example from our colleagues in Surrey, Hayley, who have been doing some of this work already, and they've been looking at exactly how information is shared between and across kind of a local authority commissioned contingency service, which is commissioned to the third sector, and then how that information gets onto an individual's care record. So I'll ask Steve after the meeting as part of the follow-up to circulate the link to that case study as well from our colleagues in Surrey, and I think that might be quite insightful for everyone actually. And there's is there kind of tender, they put it out to procurement, and it's got quite a lot of detail in terms of what they're asking for and what they've worked through. So we'll share that as well after the event if that's helpful.
Thank you. Sorry, I froze then, didn't I?
I didn't know if it was me or you because my internet's been awful,
so
I kept talking in the hope that you could hear.
Thank you. It's really interesting. Thank you.
And I think the fact that you're doing so much scoping, Jack, to understand your starting point is really important actually. And I would kind of reiterate that these projects and the bid was based on sort of scoping and understanding and getting to a point of establishing what's happening. So I think for everyone, it's to bear in mind that we're not expecting a kind of a shiny delivered solution at the end of this. It's kind of what you're all already doing is understanding how this could work best and ensure that you're delivering kind of on the long-term plan commitments. But they are kind of complex, wicked projects in terms of lots of information sharing and between and within kind of different organisations at the moment. And hopefully when integrated care systems become kind of legal entities, some of the challenges that I know Jack spoke about specifically in terms of procurement and commissioning and data and all of those lovely things, which are always hard to work through, and all the red tape might be slightly less and enable some of this to happen more easily, she says. So I think now, are we on a Q&A now, Steve? If anyone has any general kind of questions for each other, for me, about the projects, about timeframes. Go on, Heather.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up what Campbell was talking about earlier, actually, because it was a little bit music to my ears, because I just don't understand how the summary care record works within I put you on the spot, Campbell, sorry. But some of the stuff you were saying is what we've actually been grappling with. We're a bit early in this process, so we're still trying to identify who we need to talk to. But I just wondered whether you could just repeat, you know, and do a bit of an idiot's guide for my purposes, if that's all right.
Believe me, you're not an idiot. It's a really SCRs is a really useful tool, it being the national spine, and you would think that it would be the obvious place in which a contingency plan could be held to address some of the issues about duplication, because I take the point about duplication, but this would certainly be one of the solutions to stop the duplication to people that have access to the spine, that have access to the summary care record. I'm not going to pretend to understand the detail of how the summary care record additional roles information with regards carer contingency is posted in the summary care record, and instead, if you could put your email address in the chat box, I'll forward to you the response I got from NHS Digital when I went through the back door, if you like, well, the front door, asking about how the SCR works. I just went to the help desk at NHS Digital and said, how does it work? The great news, the kind of positive element of this is that contingency plans can be stored in the summary care record under the additional information roles that were opened up during the response to the pandemic. The great news is that there are fields available for the logging of that information so that it's noted. Unfortunately, it's just not as simple as that. What doesn't happen is there isn't an automatic pulling through from System 1 EMIS that then drops into the summary care record and then logs it as contingency. Instead, the person noting the information has to kind of find the place to do it. And it's just not very kind of user-friendly at that end. I think it's great working with the national team, because I do think there's a huge amount that will happen and can happen with this. And it's just about projects like this, us demonstrating the need for the work to simplify it. That will happen if we can evidence to NHS Digital what a useful thing this is. And also congratulations to Verity on her marvellous work getting the carer contingency SNOMED code, because surely that will help with regards to the summary care record information. Yeah, so let me email you across what I've got, and if anybody else is interested, I'll put my email address in the chat box, and I'm more than welcome to share that.
I just said in the chat box, if you're happy to send that email to Steve, then he can just share it with everyone, and then everyone will have that information, if that's all right.
Yeah, I think it's all right. I'll double check that there isn't anything. Yeah, it's fairly generic, so it should be okay.
Perfect.
Thanks ever so much.
And on the kind of the question of semantics and language, which I know is always really tricky, when we requested the new code, there's a synonym for it, which is emergency plan. So it's not all of the options that are available in terms of what people might call their carer contingency plan, because I agree, it kind of could be anything that speaks to that person, whose it is. But in terms of the coding for professionals, there's the synonym of carer's emergency plan. So hopefully that should enable you to speak about it in a meaningful way within your system as well, for when you're kind of having these conversations with primary care or whoever it is that's doing the coding. Are there any more questions? If not, I will go on to next steps and let you all free early. No, go on, Steve, go on to the kind of the next steps. So as you all know, the reports are due back on the 8th of March to NHS Think Carer. What I would say, and as kind of said earlier, if for the myriad of reasons that might be causing delays, you are having any delays, then please speak to your regional leads and we can talk about kind of what we would need back by 8th of March as a minimum, and then a more realistic time frame for you to tell us the more kind of detailed information, because I'm really keen that we do this well rather than in a rush for the sakes of the end of the financial year. The other question I had, and it wasn't part of the kind of the bid process as it has been for some of our other projects, like the Mind the Gap project, if any of you are involved in that, but I wondered, and you don't have to say now, but whether another event would be helpful. I saw lots of nods as people were presenting, and kind of, I think there were things that you all found helpful about each other's projects. So if another event like this would be helpful, I can see some nods, then please just feedback to Steve and or I, because we're happy to put on another event like this if you think it'll be helpful in terms of sharing. Please keep in touch with your regional leads anyway, let them know how you're getting on. I know you're probably already having conversations with them, but it's really helpful. The kind of, for us nationally, there's going to be some kind of communication regarding coding unpaid carers, and the contingency code that you are all aware of already will be part of that, as will young carers. And we will be asking it, with your permission, to share some of the projects for learning and good practice like we've done with Surrey and Steve shared in the chat box. But as Campbell says, this also is really great evidence for why we need this information to be accessible within kind of the summary care record, and kind of enables us to have those conversations with NHS Digital in a really practical way rather than a sort of policy theoretical way, which is a bit of what we've had. So it's really, really valuable insight that you're all collecting. We're also business planning at the moment, and we are looking to see if we can have additional funds to support the next steps of these projects. But it's not guaranteed, but we'll be in touch if we are successful with you all to kind of talk through the process of that in terms of scoping at the moment, but what you might need to do. The other question I have, as well as another event, is that we have quarterly, I can't remember, quarterly, I think, ICS calls. They might be monthly, Steve will tell me. And we like to share good practice and learning and projects in those, and do a bit of problem solving, and also a lunch and learn session where we share good practice and talk about kind of projects that are happening in systems. And if any of you would be happy to be involved in that, then please also let us know, either kind of relatively soon around March time, or a bit further down the line when you are embedding rather than scoping. If you have any questions about payments, which I know have not been as smooth in some cases as we might have liked, please contact our colleague Helen and copy Steve and I in. There, Steve's going to share the slides. Steve is going to share the slides, and Helen's contact details are on there. But if yeah, copy Steve and I in, or contact us, and we'll put you in touch with Helen. That's absolutely fine. And I will now pass to Steve if no one has any other questions, just to talk to you a little bit about those lunch and learn sessions. You're on mute, Steve.
There we go. Cheers, Verity. Just to quickly update you on our bi-monthly lunch and learn webinars. We've got the next one that's coming up on the 19th of January, and we're still looking for more people. We've got a good number. We've got about 400 people now registered, but you know, we are greedy. We need more people. So I'll share the link with you. So if you can just circulate it among your networks, just to see if we can get more people. We try to sort of encourage with these bi-monthly webinars, we spreading them out a little bit. You know, we're encouraging carers, professionals, ICSs, you know, the leads, and everybody involved within the carers world to be part of these webinars. So please feel free to circulate them within your networks. And this month we've got I've just got company here. Sorry, Ollie. This month we've got one from Jodis Patch, which is the east of England, and it's a social impact bond webinar. So it will be very interesting, and it's being led by the Norfolk County Council and the Norfolk CCG team. So it will be very interesting, and hopefully we'll get more people attending. And just to say, what I'll do is I will share with you the flyer that we have on these webinars. So please just circulate them within your networks as well. And the another thing I think Veritas just mentioned is our Futures collaboration platform. Please do sign up to the platform, because it's the best place for us to share our best practices, like the case studies, evaluation reports from all our projects. So please feel free. If you need to, if you haven't got access, just email myself or our shared inbox email address on there, please.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Steve. So thank you so much, everyone, for today. It's been really helpful for me, definitely, and I hope that you've all learned lots from each other, and you've got some useful contacts if you have any specific questions or anything you'd want to follow up on. And please do let us know if you'd like another event in April or May to kind of share where you've got to and kind of think about next steps for all of your projects, because we'd be really happy to facilitate that if it's something that you're interested in. So definitely let us know. And otherwise, keep in touch with your regional leads about timeframes, and we'll look forward to hearing from you in March about how far you've got to and what's going on with your projects. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.